from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Talking Catholic. I'm Jen Morrow, and with me today is Mike Walsh.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
I will say that this was December started out really well.
Because neither of us saw each other for
like
a week?
6 or 7 days.
Yeah, it was almost like 10 days, actually. It was a long time.
Yeah, you finished up the Thanksgiving edition of the paper, and then I didn't see you again until Monday morning meeting. Yeah, it was great. Yeah. And I didn't hear from you either. It was even better. I really
did. I feel like this is really short. I need to hold it up. Wouldn't you give us like the shortest microphone ever?
Well, you do have the shortest one at the table. That's true.
Okay, well, thank you. I made an intentional, I'm going to like put my mouth right up against this, not to talk to you for 10 days.
So you did a good job, and
Thanks.
I appreciated it.
Mm-hmm.
It was really nice. How did you spend your time?
I was in Texas seeing my family, including the famous Uncle Dan, who gave you all the good barbecue places to eat.
Thank you, Uncle Dan.
Yes.
He did a great job.
He did.
I like Uncle Dan.
He got a pizza oven, and so we made pizza because nothing says Texas like pizza.
Good.
So, of course, it was an abomination because they put their first pizza they made, they put like
cheddar cheese on it?
No.
Oh.
That would be good.
Okay.
No, pineapple and ham.
They went Hawaiian?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Nasty.
I'm
just going to hold this like I'm getting an award. Now I'm holding this microphone up.
Okay, listen.
Anyway, and then you went somewhere. I went to Texas, and then I came back. And you? Sir?
I don't remember what I did. You've gone full train wreck into this into the beginning of this episode.
Do you mean awesomeness?
Yeah, there you go. I had a good one. Actually, I went and saw a concert at Madison Square Garden. I saw Creed and Three Doors Down with my friends, the Henches. That was a blast. We got, because of some business work he does, he got free tickets to a Madison Square Garden Superbox. So I got to watch the concert up there. I did not realize, by the way, just how Christian that concert was going to be. I mean, I knew Creed was, kind of a Christian band, but I didn't realize the other two openers were. I didn't know Three Doors Down was a huge Christian band either.
I didn't either.
And one of the son of the Eddie Van Halen, he was in an opener for that too. Another great one, and actually it was great music all around. And if you ever get a chance to see a concert in a Superbox, I recommend it.
Have you ever been in a box at Madison Square Garden?
That's actually the first time I've ever been in Madison Square Garden, so that was nice. Yeah, I've been underneath of it many, many times in Penn Station, but I've never actually been in MSG before.
Yeah, I don't know if I have either. Now that you mention it.
Yeah. But no, it was great. Great. They apparently just spent about $100 million rehabbing it, $1 billion rehabbing. I don't know. It was beautiful. It was great. And a good concert, too. So it was a lot of fun. And then the following week, I was down in Tulsa, Oklahoma for the Catholic Charities, I don't know what it's called, Advanced Institute in Disaster Excellence is what it is. They refuse to refer to it as a conference. And so I was down there presenting on crisis communications for non-communications professionals. So basically I was teaching case managers how to do communications, how to host a press conference, how to handle media, all that fun stuff.
Have you ever been to Tulsa before?
No, that was actually the highlight of the trip, was going to Tulsa for the first time. I did not enjoy all the headaches getting there, but once I got there, it was an absolute blast.
So for those keeping score at home, you have been in Texas in November and Tulsa, Oklahoma just like 3 weeks later.
Apparently I'm the South likes me. And actually, I like the South, too. I had a great time in Dallas, and I had a great time in Tulsa.
Excellent.
Tulsa, so when you think of Tulsa in your mind, you're probably right. It's very flat, very few people. Everybody was exceedingly nice. All the Tulsonians were the people I met. But I went on a walk of like an hour one afternoon before the sun went down, and I didn't pass a single human being.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was really weird. It was like you saw people come into work at 8:30 in the morning. You saw them leave at 5 p.m., but I never saw anybody on the streets during working hours. I never saw anyone on the streets after working hours.
So it was like a quiet city after working.
Yeah. But it was lovely. The people were nice, and it was great.
Did you eat barbecue there?
No, I ate German food while I was there.
What? Oh, well, that checks out.
They had a German restaurant, and me and my co-presenter Dan Altna went there Thursday night and had a great meal of schnitzel, liters of beer, and Bavarian pretzels, and French fries cooked in duck fat, which were really good.
Actually, that probably was good.
That was outstanding. Yeah.
So
It was good.
right.
And more importantly, all the stuff we did was great. I tell you, I ran into some folks that are definitely going to be on the podcast soon. There's a couple of former podcast folks who said, hey, when are we coming back on? That are people who I ran into some folks that used to be Catholic Charities, Diocese of Camden folks. But then I ran into some incredible youngish social workers, including this one group that won a major award from Catholic Charities, who handled this enormous fire that was in Northern California. But the case managers were all mid-20s to early 30s, and I could not believe the depth. I mean, they were wonderful, but people so young who were really so adept at handling these crisis situations and these disaster situations. It was incredible. Like, I was really blown away by their presentation. It was really great. It was the camp, two words, Camp Fire in Northern California in 2018, and they've been doing case management ever since. It was really, really impressive. So.
Sounds like a good conference.
Yeah, I think I really want to have them on the podcast at some point just to sort of talk about it. And they had some really impressive views on, how the faith intersects with their social work and stuff like that. So it was wonderful.
All right, let's have them on the new year.
Actually, I think that's the plan. I'm going to reach out to them probably when we're done today and see if they'd like to come on the podcast.
Cool. Yeah. And something else kind of exciting happened while we were both away. You and your son were behind the camera at the exact same event.
Yeah. So the Paul VI and Camden Catholic had their annual
Turkey
bowl, whatever it is.
The day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, the night before Thanksgiving. And it was a big deal. WIP radio covered it, and the sports radio station in Philadelphia covered it and promoted it, and they had a bunch of folks there. And I reached out, talent there. And I reached out to the schools and said, hey, do you guys mind me photographing this? And I asked Mike Chambers, the president of Paul VI, if my son actually volunteered. He's like, hey, Dad, can I shoot it with you? And I was like, sure, absolutely you can. So we basically split up the sidelines, and he shot one and I shot the other. And between the two of us, we shot 1,300 photographs.
Oh, my gosh.
Which is a lot. And which is a lot for the guy who has to edit. He only had to shoot. I had to edit.
I was going to say, who did you make edit it?
Yeah. And I feel particularly bad because if you look in this week's Catholic Star Herald, I wasn't thinking about it this week, and there's some poor attribution in terms of photographs. There's a photograph that's going to be attributed to me that's actually Father Josh Nevitt, who took a picture of the bishops and everybody together. And then at the game, which was lovely to see, both bishops were there. They went to both sidelines. They really did a great job of making sure that both schools felt their presence there. Bishop Williams did the opening prayer. It was really nice. And then I think one of my son's photos made it in the photograph or in the paper of all the guys running out through the PBI guys running out through one of the signs. And then I got a picture of actually, you know what? That might have been my son's photo too. I gotta double check. I may have no photos.
So it says,
but I got credit for
photos, Mike Walsh photos, but none of them might actually be Mike Walsh photos.
I may have to put my own correction in next week.
For the record, the editor of the Catholic Star Herald was not aware of that, this does not fall on her.
This might have been the editor or the photo editor's job of making sure they were clearly marked as who shot what. But and then when I looked at the paper later on, it didn't even occur to me that they weren't mine because they were so good. That's the thing. I just naturally assumed they were mine.
That's of course what it was.
So to Father Josh Nevitt and to my son Jack Walsh, my apologies for the stolen valor.
Valor. Yeah, I like that.
But no, that was a great experience too. So it was being away was a good 2 weeks. Yeah. So and we should also thank our fellow co-hosts who stepped in and did a couple of episodes in our absence since we weren't able to record anything. So Mike Bress and Pete Sanchez and Carrie Janice all were here to recording for us. So thank you guys. We appreciate that.
We do appreciate that. I think Pete did too. Did he do 2 back-to-back?
Pete did do 2 back-to-back. Oh. So to our listeners, you're either welcome or we apologize. One or the other. But I listened to the episodes. I thought they were great.
I did too, actually. They were good.
Did a nice job. So Pete always brings a unique perspective to things. He's got an inherent joyfulness, which does not appear when I'm the host. So I appreciate that.
Accurate.
Yes, thank you. Speaking of joyfulness, however, this is a special episode. We're outside of the vault for once, but we're only across the street. We're actually recording from the 5th floor of the Chancery office of the Diocese of Camden, and we have 2 truly wonderful guests who are making their return to the podcast. One after a very short couple of months since their last podcast experience, and one that usually requires a great deal of arm twisting to get on. But when he does come on, it's always a great episode. And we being me, still thinks he deserves his own podcast. But we'll see. We'll see about that.
It's true.
So we're going to talk about the upcoming Jubilee, and who do we have with us, Jen, to talk about that Jubilee?
So today we have Father Robert Hughes, who is the Vicar General and Moderator of the Curia for the Diocese of Camden. And we also have Lee DelleMonache. Yes.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Who is the Director of Religious Education for the Diocese of Camden. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
So upcoming at the end of December, this was announced quite a while ago, but it's finally coming to fruition. Well, it wasn't announced a while ago. It happens every 25 years. We're having one of the Jubilees, the 25th Jubilee. So, Father Hughes, can you explain to me, our listeners, why is there a Jubilee every 25 years, and what does it usually signify?
Sure. First of all, there are different kinds of jubilees. So this is an ordinary jubilee. Those are the ones that take place every 25 years. Early in the history of in the Middle Ages, when pilgrimages and jubilees began, they were actually every 50th year, because in the book of Leviticus it talks about having a jubilee every 50th year for the people of Israel, and a whole bunch of different things would take place during the course of that year to return things to a sense of normality. The church reduced it to 25 years so that every generation can experience it, because at certain periods of time, the average age of people was less than 50 years, or
Right.
not, many people made it past 50 years, so they reduced it to 25 years, and so every 25th year is an ordinary jubilee. Sometimes there's an extraordinary jubilee, like in 2016, Pope Francis called for a Jubilee of Mercy, or a Year of Mercy, and then we will have the granddaddy of all extraordinary jubilees coming up in 2033, when the Church celebrates 2,000 years of salvation history, because traditionally the crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Jesus took place in 33 AD, so in 2033 it'll be the 2000th anniversary.
Yeah. And now, but this, even though this is a ordinary Jubilee, Pope Francis has given it some thematics, right? Would that be unusual, or is that typical for a quarter-century Jubilee?
I'm not sure if it's typical, but recent years they have come up with themes, and so this is the Jubilee of Hope. They're Pilgrims of Hope, and so that he wrote his letter introducing the Jubilee back on Ascension Thursday, and announced that it would be called the Jubilee of Hope. So.
Yeah.
And what can people expect? Well, first off, it starts in just about a week and a half or so. So what can people expect? Like, what's the first movement?
Right. Most people are familiar with the fact that in a Jubilee year there are holy doors. And so this year the Pope has announced that there will be 5 holy doors in Rome, and they will be at St. Peter's in the Vatican. So that will open on Christmas Eve. On the 26th, he's opening a different kind of a door, because he's decided that he wants to be symbolically recognize those who are imprisoned and those who are imprisoned in other ways, so that those who suffer will have a special symbolic door that will open in one of the prisons in Rome, and then on New Year's Day he will open the door at St. Mary Major, because that's the feast, obviously, of Mary, Mother of God, followed by on the 5th of, the 29th, the Feast of the Holy Family, he'll open up the cathedral door in Rome at St. John Lateran. Then on the 1st, he'll open Mary Major, and then on the 5th, he'll open the door at St. Paul outside the wall. So between the 24th of December and the 5th of January, 5 doors will be open. The interesting thing is that this year, this Jubilee, he has not asked. He has asked that local churches, the cathedrals in the various dioceses around the world, not to have a Jubilee door. no holy door at the cathedral. Instead, to have the idea of pilgrimage, to have a beginning place for people, to make their way to the cathedral, and various prayers that would happen along the way. So really to instill the idea of pilgrimage, not just driving up and walking through a door. So
now, coincidentally or intentionally, and this is this is not a sponsored podcast in any way, shape, or form, but if you would like to go and see the holy doors, there happens to be someone here right now who's making this possible. But not only himself, there's actually many other things. There are pilgrimages set up this year for a variety of them for folks who want to go to Rome and be able to walk through the doors. You'll be doing that, Bo. I think your pilgrimage is closed at this point, right?
This one's full at this point. They can't. They tried to get additional hotel space and flight space, and it wasn't possible. They expect 35 million people to go to Rome and to Italy between December of 24 and January of 25, or excuse me, 26.
Right.
And so in that Jubilee year, they're expecting at least 35 million people to visit.
And they've been preparing for it with lots of
yeah.
different construction projects and things like that. Yeah.
They do. I mean, they're used to it.
Right.
So every 25 years, there's cleaning projects and infrastructure improvements and things like that in Rome to accommodate the pilgrims. But I don't think there's been a pilgrimage pilgrimage year where there'll be 35 million people.
Yeah.
So no matter what, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And of course, with all the security stuff, it makes it it's different. The last ordinary pilgrimage in the year 2000 was free and open because 9/11 hadn't happened.
Yeah.
And all of the changes that have resulted from that and the world situation since, makes it a lot more difficult to get from pilgrimage site to pilgrimage site within the city of Rome. So it's still worth going.
Well, and that's true because on the pilgrimage, I went with you, 2 years ago, we went to a number of those sites in Rome, and they are beautiful. And I actually don't remember, even if you don't go to the Vatican, if you go to Mary Major or St. Paul outside the walls or any of the other sites, I mean, they are magnificent places to go. I have a photograph of myself. I think it's in Mary Major. And did
you take it?
No, I did not. As a matter of fact, I did not take that.
I find that hard to believe.
I don't even think I have a matter of fact. I don't even think I have a selfie in Mary Major.
But you still attribute yourself.
I'm still the reason that photo exists. One of the kids I think on the pilgrimage took a picture of me while I was in one of the side chapels. You had asked me to be a lector, and I got to be a lector in Mary Major, and that was really amazing. And truly, they are beautiful. They are beautiful places to go that will really fill you with the Holy Spirit. As a matter of fact, I think it's been announced that Pope Francis is going to be buried at one of them, right? When his time finally comes.
He has expressed a preference to be buried at St. Mary Major. Yeah, which he loves he loves the image of Our Lady salvation help of Christians, people of Rome. It's called Salus Populi Romani, and he loves that image, and it's at St. Mary Major. So every time he goes on a trip, when he leaves Rome, he goes there first, and every time he returns from a trip, he visits there, to conclude the trip. Yeah. And I mean, he has a real affection for that basilica. I will be curious to see. I know what the Vatican security is like. I don't remember any of those other sites having nearly as heavy security getting in. So I have to imagine they're going to be slightly more accessible, but also more securityed up than they were when we were there. Yeah, they all have. You have to go through a tent with a metal detector and things like that, and have your bag searched if you have a bag. Those kinds of things, but. It's all doable. It's just, pilgrimages always have obstacles, and that's intentional, so that, you have to be patient, and you have to take time to pray, and sometimes have to take time to forgive, and that's all part of what a pilgrimage is. So it's not supposed to be easy. I believe you. Although I will say, if you're going to go on a pilgrimage, go on a Father Hughes pilgrimage, because it's about as easy as you can get. I had a great time when I was on your pilgrimage to the Holy Land in Italy. That was great. Now, for those who are listening and going, I'm never going to make it to Rome. Listen, we're in the same boat.
all the dioceses will be doing things locally, and that's why we've asked Lee to be on, because she's been charged with helping us put together a lot of the and consolidating a lot of the ideas we have in our diocese for the upcoming Jubilee. So Lee, what kind of things can people expect in the dioceses locally?
Well, I think the most beautiful part about this particular Jubilee and this theme in particular of hope is that so much of what our parishes already do fits so beautifully within the theme. So the challenge and the invitation to our parishes has been to look at what you already do and put language around it, put the language of hope around it and catechesis of hope around it and do it and highlight it that way. So I think that was a collective sigh of relief from many of our parishes, like, wait, we have to do new things. No, look at what you're already doing. There's so many beautiful ministries, our catechists that they're leading that are wonderful examples of the virtue of hope, and here's their chance to highlight that. So that's what the invitation is, and so far the reception of the invitation has been wonderfully received, so I'm happy about that.
It's been nice to see so many things coming through, and beyond the beginning of the Jubilee, the Vatican has done a great job of putting out a calendar of events or a calendar of ideas for a number of things that sort of touch on every aspect of our faith, either for us to consider doing in that timeline or on our own timeline. Have you got any feedback so far about things that we're hoping to see in the diocese?
Not yet. I think because they just got the guide yesterday, the info guide yesterday, and coincidentally, this morning I met with Deanery 1's wonderful parish catechetical leaders, and we chatted about it a little bit. So their wheels are definitely spinning about things that they could collaborate on. They loved your idea of the Camino del Mar along the Cooper River, because I was with Deanery 1. So maybe some more. Here's an invitation to our parishes in Deanery 1 and 2 to maybe collaborate and offer a pilgrimage that way, a walk that way, and when the weather gets a little bit warmer and tolerable to be outside.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I love it.
So hopefully something like those things will pop up. So that's where I think the newness and innovation will come in collaboration and partnership. But locally at your parishes, I encourage all parishioners to look at what your parish already does and embrace any communication, any information you get about the virtue of hope, and experience that ministry with that lens, through that lens of hope. And I think a totally new transformation and opportunity for your relationship with Christ to deepen will happen.
I have a funny story too, though, but because I put it out to all the diocesan directors and various departments and things like that, and said, if there's anything that you would like to celebrate, please bring it forward. So our facilities manager, he comes down to my office for a meeting, and he's like, "Are you serious? Are you really expecting me to come up with something for the Jubilee?" And I said, "Dan, this would be a wonderful opportunity to invite all the maintenance, people in parishes and those who clean our buildings and things like that to come for, a partial day of recollection and maybe some talks or whatever. It even impacts every aspect of life. That it's not just a person, like, it doesn't have to be a ministry per se, but we can apply the theme of hope and the Jubilee to honor all the people who make the church work, in service to others.
I guess it was more than maybe 6 weeks ago. I put it out to my own department about what we can do for communications folks and the parishes and stuff like that. None of my department members actually responded to me. That was very useful.
Because we're thinking.
Of course, you're thinking. But we want to do the same kind of thing where we want to do like a day of reflection, a partial day of reflection, but also have some instructional classes for folks who are in the parishes or in the schools, with some best practices for them to work on, some, how people like you and I who are, inundated with the day-to-day of working in diocesan life, and yet we're able to keep our spirituality buoyed. I usually rely on other people for that, but you might be able to do it internally. These are the kinds of things that, professionals like ourselves sometimes don't get an opportunity to think about. So I love the fact that we have a Jubilee here to sort of, a Jubilee year to be able to sort of foster some of those ideas. I spoke with the head of Vitality Catholic Healthcare Services. I know she's planning some stuff around in February around the Day of the Sick. That's always a big day for them, but they're trying to get something related to pilgrimages, or I'm sorry, the Jubilee.
They're going to celebrate the Jubilee celebration for World Day of the Sick on February 11th, which is the World Day of the Sick. And it's also the Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes, which is the reason it's the Day of the Sick, because of the healings that take place there. So that's already planned. I think it's going to be at Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Glassboro, which is part of Mary Mother of Mercy Parish. And the details will be forthcoming. The other thing too, but the Jubilee opens in the dioceses around the world on the Feast of the Holy Family, which is the 29th of December. But in this diocese, we're going to do it on the Feast of the Epiphany, January 5th for us, because of scheduling conflicts. So it'll be January 5th. The Mass at the Cathedral will be at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
I believe there's an Eagles game that day, but we should be able to find people to come to
Can
the
you send
Mass,
Jack
we hope.
to take photos since
I'm
you'll be watching
just
the
so
game?
You know, I'm taking credit for the photos, but I will definitely send Jack to take the pictures. But don't worry. Hopefully that'll be the last game of the season, and it'll be all the subs in, so we can. If we don't watch that game, it'll be fine. Yeah. But I should remind my brother-in-law that I can't drive up to the Giant Stadium that day. So okay,
Good
remember that.
So, Father and Lee, we've been talking a lot about how ministries here in the diocese can do things, but you've been very clear on saying that anybody could do this. Like, if I'm a manager or an employee that does not work for the church, or how can you start thinking that way to do something for your family or friends?
Well, I think the most important place to begin, and what I had stressed with why I was advocating so much for this information guide, is catechesis around hope. What is the virtue of hope? I think that understanding is so important, and hope is so much more, and I'll certainly defer to Father to explain to the more theological piece of it. But when you look at the virtue of hope, it's much more than just optimism and wishful thinking. Well, the virtue of hope is so much more deeper meaning. It's the belief that Christ is with me now, and Christ will be with me forever, and that partnership, that he is here now, he is near forever, he is here forever, and that realization and understanding and praying about that and reflecting on that really is the beginning of everything. When you make that your lens of whatever it is that you do, there's the opportunity.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, the Pope is very clear that the creed is the center of the creed, is that I believe in the resurrection, because Jesus, by his death and resurrection, transformed all human life, to, give us the hope of eternal life. And so hope is based and centered in that there is more beyond. Even if I'm suffering, even if I'm having difficulty, the hope of eternal life is supposed to strengthen us, to endure, whatever it is that we are called to endure, but also to celebrate all of the joys too, that, and we live in a world that unfortunately a lot of people don't feel like they have hope. And that's why I think he chose this theme, or, the emphasis on hope, to really make that clear that, people are suffering because they're poor, they're suffering because they're hungry, they're suffering because they may be homeless, or an elderly person who feels that they've been left alone, or sick people who have to endure a night without people around their bed, all these different groups of people, migrants who are looking for a new opportunity and are not welcomed, or find it difficult to get their bearings or their feet underneath them. All these different people can lose hope, and the Pope is saying that no, there's always a reason to have hope.
Yeah.
And we all have to be witnesses to hope. We have to make sure that we remind people that we're not meant for this world. We are passing through this world. That's why the idea of pilgrimage is so important, because every single one of us is on a pilgrimage to heaven, and the hope of getting there is what leads us forward.
Yeah. And in terms of some of the ideas that are out there, you're certainly going to be able to go to the Jubilee 2025 website, the Vatican website, and get it's a very good website, a ton of information on there, logos to download if you like to brand any of your stuff as you're putting it together. Also, the Diocese of Camden's Jubilee 2025 webpage is now live, which will have all of our stuff on there as well, along with our Jubilee guide. Lee, you helped put that Jubilee guide together. What are some of the things that are in the guide that we're sending out to folks?
The critical piece of it is that first of all, it explains the virtue of hope, broadly explains it, but then it bases how our celebration is really based on 4 pillars, pilgrimage and prayer being one of them in the first one, but also sacraments, service, and witness. And when you read Pope Francis's papal bull on this Jubilee, that was so clear in what he was suggesting and calling us to do and calling us forth. And then as we came together as a brain trust in the diocese and started brainstorming different ideas of what we wanted to do, those 4 themes bubbled up. They all centered around pilgrimage and prayer. They centered around service, around giving witness, and certainly around the sacraments. As things that Father Hughes had mentioned earlier, particularly the sacraments of healing, penance and sacrament of the sick. All of the sacraments are opportunities for recognizing the virtue of hope and hope in our lives. Those 2 in particular, I think you're going to see a lot of our parishes are going to be providing more opportunities for penance, and also hopefully educating more about the opportunity for the sacrament of the sick, and hopefully parishioners would ask for it, would request it.
Yeah, that's great.
And aren't there, we kind of touched on it, about certain days that some of these themes are circling around, how you mentioned like the health and how vitality might be doing something. But isn't there almost something for every single day? If I know communications has one.
Yeah, the Vatican is doing theirs in January, their communications one, which I was, by the way, invited to because I'm a board member of the Catholic Media Association. So apparently I'm being encouraged to attend the one in the Vatican. Just letting you know now. But I
when that travel request comes in.
Yeah.
However,
we didn't make the request.
No. Sadly, I've already told them, nah, I'm not going to that one. Ours actually, however, the one in our diocese, I've tentatively scheduled for May. Around the World Day of Communications. I'm not really sure why the Vatican did theirs in January, other than they figured if they started with the communicators, we'd tell everybody, which, if that's the reason why, good thinking. But that's the beauty of it. So the Vatican's calendar is outstanding. And I don't know if there's stuff going on every day, but there's stuff going on almost every week. And there's no reason you have to do, if they have a great idea, say the World Day of the Sick, but that's not going to work for you, you can do that at another time of the year. So as other dioceses are listening to this, or parishes are listening to this, don't feel like you need to be beholden to the Vatican calendar, but it is chock full of good ideas, things that you can sort of build on down here. So and the nice thing is, if you, as Father Hughes recently pointed out, if you can get the buildings guy at least thinking about doing something for the Jubilee, everybody should be interested in the Jubilee, because the truth of the matter is, I mean, you and I were both in the secular world before we came here. I brought my faith into my secular work as often as I could, and I love doing stuff like that. If you're in the secular world and there's a way for you to sort of celebrate the Jubilee in some way, you should consider it.
That's why I love the guide so much, because, like I said, there really is. It's almost like every other day, definitely every week. But you can find something on there that you can relate to and do it as an individual, and include the people around you who either you work with or you love or friends, or that's why I love it.
Well,
and that's what's brilliant. Sorry,
you're fine.
That's what's brilliant about the Vatican calendar. I mean, that it honors artists, architects, comedians, people who bring hope into the lives of other people by virtue of what they do. Like I said, it's not just about ministries. It's every aspect of life. How is it that we have the opportunity to bring hope to other people, or share our hope with other people, so literally, and the calendar will continue to be filled. They did a preliminary calendar, and I'm sure they'll add things to it as the time goes on, and so will we.
And I was just going to add to that think of all of your hobbies and things, music, literature, running, hiking. There's all the things that you love to do. Those are all opportunities, and you'll see within the Vatican calendar, they're all opportunities to tap into that virtue of hope and deepen your relationship with Christ. And work on your hope first, and then you can certainly give witness to it and model it for others.
No,
Absolutely.
I can hope for better health. That'll be, or less fat anyway. That'll be nice.
You've been hoping that for years.
I have. I was just
Hope
waiting.
all you want.
Apparently, I was just waiting on the Jubilee. Let's not forget. We are throwing around this word Jubilee. It is intended to be a celebration. I mean, it is supposed to be these should be wonderful affairs, joyous affairs of the beauty and reach of our faith. I mean, I want these things to be fantastic. I know the Vatican is going to have a series of concerts. There's no reason that the diocesan level or the parish level we can't have concerts as well, in addition to days of reflection for musicians and things like that. I love that. Now, Father Hughes, in many of the meetings that we have spoken about in the past, he's talked about how he wants to bring artists together and sports teams together from across, and we should be doing things more collectively and having these big events. Sounds like to me like a Jubilee year would be the perfect time for something like that.
I'm just shocked that you haven't come up with a Jubilee for bakers yet.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. I figure I got until December because that's when everybody gets into baking gear. So I can wait till the end of the Jubilee. But you're right. I should do that. As a matter of fact, I was having, even when I was at this meeting down in Oklahoma, so many I had so many baking conversations. Then we recently had a Christmas dinner at the bishop's house, and there was a lot of baking conversation about that.
See?
So we'll have to see.
I think you should definitely.
I've been given.
I don't think you should wait till December. I really don't.
Okay, we'll see. Well, see, the other reason baking in December is a good idea is because that's when you wear the most amount of clothes usually, and I don't take off weight in December. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, even with you, Lee, you were kind of talking about like hobbies and everything like that. Like when I looked at the one for communications, and I'm kind of along the lines of, how can we bring people together? And I was like, communications we could do. This is why I don't sit on committees, because like my ideas are like so grand. They're like, bring it down a little bit. So I don't do well on.
That's not the reason you're not invited to committees. just to be clear.
Is it because I don't bring baked goods, Michael? Like
doesn't
probably
help. I'll tell you that right now.
But like writing, right? So I was like, we could do something for like have a writing contest or a showcase where some of our Catholic school students showcase. It doesn't even have to be writing; it could be photography or videography, and because so many of our schools have those capabilities, almost all of them do actually. So why not highlight some of those?
Schools, parishes, religious ed programs, all of those. Because a big part of the Jubilee too is the Pope speaks about youth and young adult in particular because they are hope. When we look at them, we see hope for the future. So recognizing that and having them explain what hope means to them, could be a wonderful exercise.
Absolutely. So, schools department. Mike Bress listens. I have to say, our co-host Mike Bress listens to this podcast religiously. I hope he makes it to the 36-minute mark because he's got a lot of work ahead of him right now. Seriously,
well, we're kind of already working on that, so now we're just going to expand it.
Okay, there you go.
How do you like that? I'm trying to help you out, Mike. Bress.
There you go.
Not you, Walsh.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't expect it. Have you found any hurdles to this Jubilee planning at all? Like things that you've we've started putting this together that have been a little trickier than you anticipated, or the only hurdle I've found so far is getting people to understand what a Jubilee is, which is why I'm really hopeful this podcast will be helpful.
Well, I don't necessarily see this as a hurdle. I see it as opportunity. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the importance of understanding the virtue of hope and the theological virtues of faith, hope, and love, how hope fits into that. I honestly think that if we do well in that catechesis and people come to a really a deeper understanding of the virtue of hope, I think everything else is going to happen naturally and beautifully. Yeah. And the influence of this Jubilee celebration will be widespread. But we have to start. We have to get beyond the initial thing of wishful thinking of hope, because that certainly is a part of it, but it's so much deeper than that. And honestly, it's been a gift to me I went back to the catechism and reading about the theological virtues, and I re-listened to Father Mike Schmidt's podcast on Catechism in a Year on the theological virtues. And it was a wonderful education and a re-education for me to understand that the depth of that and how they interrelate with each other. So to me, I think that's the biggest invitation and opportunity. Understand the virtue of hope more, and I'm telling you, your relationship with Christ will just take off.
So what does that look like concretely, do you think? Like, I think it's difficult. talking about a hurdle is a little bit is that we're going to go into January, which is kind of a tough month, especially in February,
Dark,
especially when it's
cold,
dark, it's cold, we're lonely, nobody wants to leave their homes. Like how
Just
we
to be clear, I love that time of year, so I am full of hope. I don't know what you people are talking about, but continue.
Okay, so like if you are ready, that you already know those are going to be your tough months. How can you get out of yourself? Because that's really a lot of what it is too, is getting out of your own mind to find that hope. I mean, I guess it is a godsend, of course, that it starts in January because so it gives you something to strive for. But concretely, what are some concrete ways to embrace, you think, this?
I think people do. We've all have coping mechanisms for that time of the year that all center around hope. You know, if you're lucky enough to be able to go to Florida or to Texas or to Hawaii or wherever, to someplace warm, people do it. Because even if you go for a long weekend or for a week, if you're able to do that, it restores your energy and gives you hope that, I'm going to make it through this cold period of time or dark period of time. But even the celebrations that happen, in that period, in those months, I mean, we have New Year's, it's always hope that we're going to do better this year, that we're going to shed a few pounds and bake cookies.
Make more baked goods.
Make more baked goods that somehow won't add pounds to us.
Miraculous.
We get to Martin Luther King Day, where it's a day of service, where we recognize that by helping other people, we not only help ourselves to feel better, but we give people hope. And then church-wise, the beginning of February is important. February 2nd is the Feast of the Presentation, and it's a recognition that in the northern part of the world, the northern hemisphere, it actually begins the period of lightness. And so in many countries like Ireland, that's the first day of spring. And the northern tier of countries really look forward to that day because they've made it through the darkest period of time. And things now change significantly. And then of course that leads right into all the other celebrations: Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day. So there's a lot of reasons to gather people together and to share life and to look forward. And so I mean that I think is that's the choice we have to make. I do believe it's a choice to be happy and to be hopeful, and our faith gives us a great deal of opportunities to do that, but also reasons to do it. And and as Lee keeps talking about, the theological virtue of hope is so very important in moving us forward and connected to faith and love. So
this morning, I mentioned earlier, I had a gathering of the religious ed directors in Deanery 1, and this is my fourth of the 5 meetings. And today, one of the DREs walked up to me, who was absolutely lovely, and thanking me that we gathered. He goes, "This rejuvenated me." And I was so grateful to hear that. And so this just simple, as Father was talking about gathering, the simple act of just getting folks that have similar experiences together, 6 of you, 8 of you, 10 of you, 12. So in these dark, cold winter months, just get a few of you together just to talk about whatever your area of interest is. That is something that can be concretely done. That certainly contributes to flexing that hope muscle, and strengthening that hope muscle.
In that same vein, that looking around the table to see who's missing, and then doing something to reach out to them. I mean, most of us nowadays have printed Christmas cards because we don't have the time to sit down and write them. But if in January each week you wrote one letter to somebody that you haven't spoken with, or you pick up the phone and make a phone call to somebody that is by themselves, you're witnessing to hope.
Right.
And it's those are simple things that people can do. You can bake cookies and take them to your neighbor that recently lost a spouse or whatever. I mean, there's all different ways of expressing it and trying to make sure that people know there's a reason to live, there's great hope, in the world, and we have to show it.
One of the examples that came out of the Eucharistic Congress, and actually was this initiative called Walk with One, and I think is a perfect example of what Father Hughes is talking about. This isn't a grandiose, big to-do celebration where thousands of people come together, but if you're a regular Mass goer, and there's someone in your life that you care about and that is somehow connected to the church, but maybe it could be connected a little bit deeper, to invite them. Invite them with you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be to Mass, but maybe it's to a prayer group or a book club, or invite them to that something of the Lord,
Right.
and then from there something more can grow. So that one-on-one certainly is, the big gatherings are very important, but if you're a person who likes to operate in smaller circles in the one-on-one, that's just as important, if not even more important, to extend that invitation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny. As you know, not a big fan of people. But I recently had a conversation with my cousin, and who's also not a big fan of people, and we were talking about the fact that we need to get together more often, and it got me to thinking that as much as I am an introvert, we really do need to make that. Really is something that really does elevate people's spirits, and it really does give that sense of inclusivity, and people, and even if they say no, they oftentimes appreciate being asked and stuff like that. So I think that would be a great thing to do, and this Jubilee does give all the reasons in the world to break through those usual, particularly for me, self-imposed barriers to doing stuff like this, because we can say this, it's a Jubilee year, this is a day of a time of joy, let's have a special event or a special thing and bring everybody together. I've said it for years, even though I'm in the mass communication business, I hate live streaming stuff because everything is better when we're together. We should always be together if at all possible for these big events and these notable times, and both in our faiths and in our personal lives. So I hope people listen right now will consider that.
And I think that's a very strong reason why the Holy Father decided to give the theme Pilgrims of Hope, because he sees. He has said repeatedly, put your phone down when there's a procession with the Holy Father. He says all he sees are the backs of phones, as he's processing down the aisle at St. Peter's Basilica or in the square. It's not the same when you're watching it on the screen. It's not the same as looking at somebody when an event is taking place, and so it makes it isolating. You could be in a group of 40,000 people in the square in St. Peter's Square, but feel very much alone because you're only connected to your phone.
Yeah.
You're not looking around and recognizing that there are people here from all over the world that I can make connections to if I chose to. And that's what I think it has to be intentional. It doesn't just happen. You have to choose to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, even when you were saying we already have the tools in the darker months, like taking a trip to Florida, and then we might do that every year. You might not recognize that that's why we're doing it,
right.
But even just opening your eyes to recognize, like, okay, hold on. Because I think if you're more intentional about even recognizing, okay, I am taking a trip right now, let me focus on being happy while I'm gone.
My dad was, he couldn't go to Florida. He just didn't have the financial wherewithal to do that on a regular basis, But he always wore Hawaiian shirts and shorts. So it could be 12 degrees out, and he would show up at St. Joe's Parish in Sea Isle, and the parishioners would look at him like, "Why are you wearing shorts and a Hawaiian shirt?" And he says, "Because it reminds me that spring will soon be here, and it gives me hope that I can get through these winter months." He hated winter,
Yeah.
And he put a picture. He always had a little bouquet of artificial daisies or something. They're yellow flowers, because he'd focus on that. He'd be looking out the window and it's desolate, and he could go back and look at these flowers and be like, okay, spring will be here at some point, And
Great
I
perspective.
love it.
Yeah.
That is beautiful.
That's it.
But he brought hope to other people, because they'd look at this Hawaiian shirt and they'd be like, "Yeah, you're kind of right,"
Yeah.
It's like putting a palm tree on your refrigerator, so that you have something to focus on.
I'm going to put plastic flamingos in the yard and let's
There
see
you
what
go.
the neighbors say.
I can tell you what they're going to say. Yeah, that's all right. But put them up there anyway. Who cares? You're
Yeah,
bringing joy.
that's
I don't
right.
care about that. No, it's true. It's these little things. You can model good behavior. We talk about this all the time in our department. We have to model good behavior. We have to, listen. I forget how this got brought up recently, but when we had Bishop Williams' announcement in May, at the top of my script, I wrote, "Be joyful." And it was a reminder, because I am, as you all know, not naturally joyful, and but I had to be intentional. I had to remember it, and I had to model good behavior, even though it was against all of my usual personality quirks. This is a perfect time to continue to do that, and we can all grow a little bit as well. Jubilee. This is a as you said earlier. This Jubilee. this Jubilee is an opportunity. It is an opportunity. We can try out new things. And you know I love trying out new things, Jen.
You do.
I want to. I'm never. I actually hate doing the same thing twice. So let's. I want this an entire year of new things. By the way, Jen, I'm going to need 5 things from the Catholic Star Herald of new things to be done for this year, in addition to the 20 ideas Father Hughes gave you earlier today.
It may have been more than 20.
No, but we do. Father Hughes, I may have mentioned this on the podcast once or twice. If he wasn't the Vicar General for the diocese, if he hadn't become a priest, he would be making excellent marketing president, because he's constantly
Fortune
generating
500
great ideas.
CEO.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be fantastic. Matter of fact, there are days I'm not entirely certain that I'm not superfluous to the diocese, because Father Hughes is able to come up with all these ideas on his own. But, think about these things. Think about some wild ideas for the Jubilee, really fun things, little crazy things, and they don't necessarily have to spend, necessarily spend a ton of money on it. But if you have the wherewithal and you can spend a little money on it,
not only that,
too.
the thing is, again, it's not about actually having them come to fruition the way you think they're going to.
True.
But, trying is equally important, because the effort brings hope.
That's right.
So, I don't think that everything that gets suggested is going to get done. But if we don't suggest it, then there's no thinking about it, and there's no possibility for it. So, the Jubilee, I think, is a time to try new things. It's a time to repeat old things, but it's a time to be intentional about trying to be witnesses to the fact that there is a great deal to be hopeful for and about.
I know, well, anybody who listens to the podcast, Mike has mentioned numerous times that he doesn't want anybody to come visit your office before 10 o'clock.
or my house, but yeah, sure.
Well, I'm not going to show up at your house, but what do you think if I just show up in your office at 9:30 as in the new Jubilee year?
I think you'd have to knock Nicole Kiefer out of your way, because I got the head of
That's
Vitality
true.
pretty much parks herself there, and she's gotten better. She now texts me firsthand. She's like, "I need 10 minutes of your time at 9:30 in the morning." I'm like, "Fine."
I think the Vicar General will be in your office, a few times to make sure that people are actually doing their work.
Not the worst idea. Send them back to their desks. But I will say that that building over there, the pastoral department, or the pastoral building rather, is a haven of people who have really good ideas and always want to do stuff. Nicole Kiefer being one of those people, yourself, Stacey Napolitano. There's a lot of great people over there who are not necessarily working jobs you think of as spiritual jobs. They're ministerial jobs. But, they bring their faith into it, and they're constantly thinking about ways of, bringing their faith into their daily life and their work life and into the sense of community. So I'm glad we have those people over there. That's why I'm just saying. That's why I'm not moving back to this building anytime soon.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
We have the same on this side too.
If you say so. No, but it's true. You're absolutely right, because there are, Laura Montgomery, who's our CFO. She is a great person to chat with. It's funny, you don't necessarily think of a numbers person, even though my wife is a numbers person. She's very spiritual, but you don't necessarily think of numbers people and being overtly or overly spiritual. And it's great.
Well,
Are you kidding? They're constantly praying the budget works.
Well, that's a good point. That's a different story altogether, though.
I like that. Or when you said Dan, when Dan was up here with buildings, and I remember a couple years ago, a year or two ago, when we did a whole bunch of features on people who work in the maintenance departments and how much that job was tied to their faith because of the carpentry. Like Jesus was a carpenter. I use my hands to do things, and it wasn't just one person or to say this. Like almost all 5 people that we interviewed said that, and I was like, exactly. Like it's up to us whether or not to see Jesus in what we do every day.
You're reminding me, there's this modern day parable. I remember reading in a leadership book, and it was, a person is walking the streets of a city, walking by a construction site, and 3 construction workers are doing the same exact task. And the person stops the first one and says, "What are you doing?" And the person says, "I'm laying bricks." Like, look what I'm doing. Can't you see for yourself? I'm laying bricks. So the person walks to the second. Well, what are you doing? Now they're doing the same exact thing. And that person says, "I'm building a wall." And then he walked, the bystander walks to the third person again, doing the same exact thing. "Well, what are you doing?" "I'm building a cathedral." So that's perspective, and that's when you recognize no matter what your task is, when you put it into that context, there's the hope, there's the beauty, and there's the growth. So that's it's all about context and realizing that there's nothing that is worthless, that you're all of value, and your efforts, no matter what your role is, has value and purpose and is needed for this world.
That is an excellent way to finish this podcast. Thank you very much, Lee. That was really
that's the Holy Spirit.
That's dropping the mic right there. Thank you for that. Well, to our listeners, I hope we've given you some ideas for things to consider in your own parishes, in your own lives, in your own diocese. To the other dioceses, I hope you start working on this, because I haven't seen anybody publish anything but us recently. So get moving. The Vatican's doing a great job. And, time to catch up with the Diocese of Camden. And if you have ideas for things that you'd like covered or promoted in the Catholic Star Herald related to the Jubilee, make sure you reach out to Jen Morrow and let her know. All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much to our guests, and thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week. See you, everyone.